is so much healing in speaking your truth and speaking your story, like getting it out of yourself, sharing it with other people really is a healing experience. You pass on the information, you share your stories, and you learn from each other. And um, yeah, it's really powerful.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Mindful Evolution podcast. I am your host, Leah Drew, and today I have a fellow woman who is also a healing guide herself. And Casey Hibbard is with us today. Casey is the head storyteller and podcast host of Rebuilding My Health, where she highlights inspiring stories from others who have successfully healed through natural and conventional approaches. Casey's goal is to educate and inspire others to go beyond conventional medicine to heal and treat the roots, not just the symptoms. Casey, it's a pleasure having you here today.
Yeah, well, likewise, Leah. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. I'm excited to chat with you.
Same. I love what you're doing in the world with your podcast, where you're really just shining a light on self-healers, people that have gone deeper into their healing journey because they've likely navigated some sort of pain, challenge, or really experience with their health that maybe others haven't been able to give them answers to. And I know that you yourself have navigated your own journey into health and wellness and healing. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that journey and how it led to you starting your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I unexpectedly ended up in the health world because of my own health crash. I think like many of us who end up in the health world, kind of started with your own health. So after my son was born, it was probably about 10 years ago, my health just started unraveling. And yeah, it was kind of minor at first, but then pretty quickly started worsening. I mean, my gut was wrecked. I was having arthritis, like severe fatigue, just like muscle weakness, like inflammation, to the point where at one point my vision was blurry. Like the inflammation was that bad. And when I went into the eye doctor, they were like, "Yeah, your eyes are just really inflamed. There's like nothing other than that. It's inflammation." So that was kind of the wake up call. Like, wow, this is like really affecting my daily life. If I can't see well, if I can't like keep up with my family, and up to that point, I had been pretty active. Was a hiker. Um, not a serious runner, but I did run some. I stayed pretty active. So I started, going to doctors. At that point, I was in the conventional medical world. We had insurance. And so I started seeing doctors and really was not finding the help that I felt like I needed. I wasn't, getting better. One doctor, I went to a gastroenterologist for IBS, and he was like, "Well, just don't eat broccoli." I was like, "All right, well, cut out broccoli," and that really wasn't solving the problem. So yeah, ultimately I had to take what I consider some natural approaches to be able to get better. And really, when I say natural approaches, some of it, a lot of it is lifestyle, and we can, talk more about, what that looked like, some of the foundational elements that helped me heal. But it really was a root cause approach, like going beyond what the symptoms were and trying to find, what is the cause behind the fatigue? What is the cause behind the inflammation and all that? So, um, and you ask, how that kind of led me to what I'm doing. I have spent the past, 25, 30 years as a writer, capturing stories and interviewing in the corporate world for companies. And I kept running across these super powerful health turnaround stories that were buried in private Facebook groups, and decided, these stories needed to come to light. And so really it was just a passion project. I like started reaching out to people and asking if they would share their story, and created a site to start documenting those stories. And really it's just, evolved and snowballed from there, to the point where I have hundreds of stories now captured between my site and my podcast.
Yeah, I can imagine some of those stories were supportive for you along your journey towards health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every single interview, I can honestly say, has taught me something. If not something new, then like reinforced something, or reminded me, oh yeah, I do need to pay more attention to, getting sunlight, or, whatever. Like every single interview has been healing. And at the same time, it's healing for the person who is sharing their story. I've heard people, and you, Leah, you probably have this experience too. It's sort of so validating and healing personally to be able to share your story. People would be moved to tears when they're telling me their story because of everything that they've been through, and recognizing how far that they've come. And so it's pretty breathtaking to, kind of walk someone through that, and help them share their story.
Yeah, how powerful to have a podcast where you're receiving the story, and so they're receiving healing. You're receiving healing from listening, and your listeners receiving healing as well. So it's just this awesome little collaboration of healing you have going on.
Like you said, it's a really good point. It's kind of win-win-win, all around for everybody involved. It's a kind of, it's like our own little healing circle of as people share their stories.
Yeah, I think it's so important to listen, right? And there's that aspect that we run into in healing of being heard. And being heard is so important in the healing process, in relationships, not just with yourself, but in relationships with others as well, right? Like there's a concept of needing to be heard by others. And for those that have navigated this challenging experience of healing in different ways, right, based off of each individual's personal experience, by sharing, we get to lean into being heard by others. And there's so much that happens in that space of being heard, where you can let your guard down, where you can really embrace, like, yeah, this is what I've navigated. This is what I've been through. This is what I've experienced. And to be heard by the other person, you're actually being received. And that's one of the most beautiful things I find about podcasting is it's a beautiful space to allow your individuals, your that come onto the podcast to be heard. And being able to share that experience allows them to keep growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That there is so much healing in speaking your truth and speaking your story. Kind of like journaling, like getting it out of yourself. Sharing it with other people really is a healing experience. And then I would hope also that not just for the individual that it's healing, but they are, they're passing that on to someone else, and that's like probably, since humans have existed, that's probably the way originally that people did heal. You pass on the information, you share your stories, and you learn from each other. And it's really powerful.
Do you find that those that have shared their story with you, do you find that there's a common thread of not being heard by Western medicine and Western medical doctors?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just the last interview that I did, she said, she was sitting in her doctor's office, and they, exhausted like all the lab tests. They'd done all this stuff, and they couldn't find why she was feeling so terrible, so exhausted and having pain. And they looked at her and they said, listen, we've been talking about it, and we really think it's in your head. Like, I don't know that they said it in those words, but basically that's what they were saying. And they were like, we can't help you. We wish you all the best, but, we really think that you need to just like go to therapy and work through this. And it's, and to be told like it's all in your head. And so many people actually have reported that to me, that, their doctors kind of throw up their hands and are like, well, because we can't find an answer, it must be psychological. That you're having this pain or digestive issues or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, that is a common thread for sure. People feeling like they're not being heard. I mean, doctors have 10 minutes with you in the managed care system, so there's not really time to be heard, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely see that as being one of the flaws of our Western medical system is like you're saying, right? There's not enough time to be heard, right? That's the first thing. And also from my own personal experience, not feeling like I wasn't being heard by doctors, we're raised in this society where we're almost trained to put our trust into and rely on the doctors, the PCPs, the medical providers that are in our lives. And to then continue to go to your medical provider with these symptoms, with this experience, with this pain, and to have them turn around and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. From my experience, there was so much disappointment in that engagement. And then later on to actually find out and navigate through what it was within my body that was challenged or that was not well, it brought up a lot of feelings of resentment for me towards the Western medical system. And I can imagine that other people have similar experiences, feeling disappointed, feeling maybe betrayed, feeling any type of anger or resentment towards doctors. Is that something that you hear often in those you're interviewing?
Yeah, for sure. There's kind of, the full gamut of emotions. There's feeling, hopeless and helpless, because these people who have these years and years of training, and should be that, sometimes people go to like Mayo Clinic or, some of the top places in the world, and they are not able to be helped. So you're like, well, I must be helpless or hopeless. But then it kind of, at some point, with most of these people who found other avenues, it does kind of turn to some anger, or, at least some like drive, like, no, I am not hopeless. I'm going to find the answers, whether I have to do it myself. And most of these folks go into full on research mode. They are researchers. They go, down the rabbit holes on Google or wherever, and really start searching for these answers, and we're told like not to Google our symptoms, don't start that. But really, that's where most of these folks who ultimately succeeded start. That's where we start these days, is online, looking for answers.
Gathering
And
information.
yeah, gathering information. Yeah. And there is a point in almost every interview I do where the person sort of assumes control. That's a big part of it, to be like, I'm not at the whim of this person telling me I can't be healed, that this is just the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. I am going to be the CEO of my own health, or whatever you want to call it, and call the shots and look for the information and find the practitioners that are right for me, that may be able to help me. So that's a big part of every story, really, is kind of that assuming, taking back control.
That makes complete sense. I mean, from my experience in my own journey, and
Yeah, I
from working
bet.
with many clients, that moment where someone chooses to take radical responsibility for their own personal experience is the moment that I see, just like you're saying, being the catalyst into a totally different experience, totally different symptoms, their body feels different, their mind starts to feel different, and they start to realize that they actually can be empowered over their ability to support themselves. And they don't have to rely on the doctors, the nurses, the medical staff to be the ones in charge of the way that they feel and the experience that they're having.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's a powerful turning point. And it usually is really the turning point for most people.
When do you feel like you experienced your turning point?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I'm not sure if somebody's asked me that before.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, probably the turning point when I really think about it was the blurry vision. Because, before it was kind of like, oh, I can slog through if I'm pretty tired. I, just can't do as much. But that like is so life impacting for your vision to be affected. And that's actually pretty common. I've interviewed quite a few people where like their health crisis kind of starts with a vision thing because the eyes are pretty impacted by inflammation. So yeah, that was kind of my turning point where I was like, no, I'm seeking out whatever resources I need. I'm going to do whatever I need to get the inflammation down quickly. So yeah.
What was the first step that you took after that turning point?
Yeah, first step honestly was diet, nutrition, because and I see that a lot with folks because from one meal to the next, you can start, I think, I believe, changing the input that's going into your body and reduce your inflammation. And it's not like the one fix, but you can pretty quickly like go by, and there are a lot of different anti-inflammatory diets out there. There's like specific ones like the autoimmune protocol or paleo or Wall's protocol or whatever. But there's also a personalized element to it. I react to tomatoes. Like tomatoes like spike my inflammation. So doing something like the Whole 30 where you're eliminating a lot of stuff and just focusing on like really basic whole foods and yeah, high nutrient foods for 30 days, and then you start bringing them back and you notice what's spiking your inflammation. That can be really powerful for people. So yeah, so for me it was kind of a version of paleo, and I'm actually kind of still on that because it just works really well for me over the years. And a lot of my brain is clearer. uh, but as I started experimenting with diet, like I had gut symptoms that were pretty severe at that point. Like diet like very quickly stopped my gut symptoms. And I learned kind of going from there, like I still needed to like heal the root causes behind some of the gut stuff. I had gut infections and parasites and all that, but I stopped the symptoms pretty quickly by not giving my body things that were gonna exacerbate it. So that was one. um Gut healing, as I said, was really huge for me. I had to heal small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida, H. pylori, parasites. Seems like there's another one I'm probably forgetting, but my gut was kind of a mess, just kind of like bad bacteria because as a child I'd had tons of antibiotics. And so really working on that over time was huge for me. And with those two things, probably 75% of my stuff went away with an anti-inflammatory diet and gut healing. I mean, um, anxiety went away. The arthritis pretty much went away. Most of the fatigue, the gut symptoms. And I don't think I mentioned, but I did have autoimmunity. I mean, it was turning up on my lab testing that I had autoimmunity. But over time, with all the work I've done, my autoimmune markers have gone down to 0. So it's been pretty powerful to see.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you've been able to use nutrition and your food input to support your body. And I think a lot of people forget that the fuel that you're putting into your mouth and into your body is what's going to run your system. It's going to run your organs. It's going to impact how your entire being functions. And for people that are navigating chronic pain, chronic inflammation, autoimmune disease, I completely agree with you. I think that nutrition is the number one most important thing to start to look at, because that is the fuel. That is what's going to keep you going. It's what's going to make such a big shift in your physiology and your biochemistry. And I also very much agree with you on the whole 30. I started the whole 30 myself when I really started shifting my inflammation and made that a point to work on. And when I did the whole 30, what I loved so much about it, and what I think is so helpful, is that it's not only teaching you how to feel or how you do feel when you eat very clean, but it's also teaching you what to look for on labels as ingredients that are actually not supporting the way that you're starting to feel. And on top of that, it starts to introduce this idea of having a relationship with your body and being able to communicate with it and learn and understand how it reacts and responds based off of that input that is going into it. So I find it interesting that you bring up the whole 30, because I think a lot of people feel so overwhelmed when it comes to nutrition. Like you said, there's so many freaking diets out there that's like, eat this, don't eat that. Don't eat this, but eat that, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like, just start being clean. Start eating clean and start simplifying so that you can really understand how things are influencing your body. Start understanding seed oils. Start understanding additives. Start understanding how colorings are influencing your nervous system, your body, your brain, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. And I think that the whole 30 really starts to bring that into view for people, and recognizing how all of those additives and sulfates and sulfites and all these things that we're putting in our body on a regular basis are actually not helping our body with the healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, it brings up a point, like, you have to get hyper aware of your own body. Like, I'll say to my husband, my inflammation is up. I need to like really start paying close attention to my diet and what I'm doing. And he's like, how do you know your inflammation is up? I'll be like, well, my hands are kind of puffy today, and that's one of my signs. Or my toes hurt. My toes get puffy. And, maybe it's different for somebody else. Maybe somebody else has brain fog or whatever. But it's like it's like a machine or something. I need to calibrate. Like, if we go on vacation and I like eat a little bit off of my normal diet, I will notice that. I'm like, okay, I need to like get back to my baseline and like eat the way I know I need to eat. So you really do have to pay attention to your body. Maybe track everything you're eating. There are apps to do that now. Track any weird symptoms that pop up and go, hey, yeah, every time I eat tomatoes, that happens. Or maybe for somebody else it's dairy, or there's some like common triggers, and then weird ones, like some people can't eat cantaloupe, but it's such a personalized thing on some levels. But there are certain diets, like we talked about with the whole 30, where a lot of people see results because it's just a very back to basics approach.
The very basics.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's not easy.
It is hard. And then it's so eye-opening realizing how much you're actually off from that baseline, right? From those basics. And when I really started paying attention to the ingredients I was putting in my body, I was in a bodybuilding show when I first got out of college.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And it was a really, looking back, I didn't do it in a healthy way. I was thinking that I was eating all these healthy foods and putting these healthy things on my food. And in reality, all of the things that I was putting in my body were filled with hormones, were filled with additives, were really like designed to look healthy, but in reality, the breakdown was not healthy. And when I started diving into the Whole30, it was so eye-opening to me to recognize how many things I was putting in my body that I actually thought were healthy that really were not, and were only contributing to my inflammation, to my back pain, to my poor sleep, to my anxiety, to my depression, to all of these symptoms that you're talking about here as well. And when I started eliminating those things that were influencing that, all of my symptoms started to reduce.
Yes. Wow.
And
Yeah.
I think that we live in this world where all these things, they're promoted to us in every inch of commercialism. And they're promoted to look healthy. One of the biggest things that I see, like makeup. Like makeup is filled with toxins and chemicals, but oftentimes promoted to be this healthy thing, and it's not.
Right.
And that happens across the board with food, with products, with lotions and creams and makeups and all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned from someone I interviewed on my podcast the word natural is not regulated. Like anybody can use the word natural or all natural on packaging, and it gets us, like, oh, it's got natural flavors in it. So it must be good. It must be all natural. So really do have to read those labels.
Those are the areas too that will get you. It's like when someone puts natural flavoring on an ingredient list. Like, guys, question what those things are. And if it's that? Exactly, if it's ambiguous, chances are it's not clean.
Yeah. Right. It actually does say on some ingredient labels natural flavors. And you're like, okay, I don't know what that is.
Because the idea, like, right, if you were to look at natural flavoring versus artificial flavoring, your mind's instantly going to go to, oh, natural flavoring, so that's good for me.
Yeah.
But in reality, if you don't actually know what that natural flavoring is, it might not be good for you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So with all of the interviews and all the stories that you've been able to share through your writing, through your podcasting, what are some of the top things that you see all self-healers doing in their healing and recovery process?
Yeah, definitely. So, we've talked a lot about diet. I mean, I would honestly say that nearly every person I have interviewed has had to do some sort of diet change, whether that's cutting out gluten, cutting out dairy, or, finding their own food sensitivity, something that basically reduces the inflammation. So that's a huge one that's really across the board. And I'm going to go a step further. And I know this can be controversial, but almost every single person has had to cut out gluten. That's sort of like, I think I have like 2 stories on my site where the people are like, yeah, I still eat gluten. And I'm always surprised. I'm like, wow, like, great. That's working for you. Great. But like so many people, out of hundreds.
And there's a big difference too, I think, to note between like gluten that we get here in the United States versus gluten that we get in another country. Because do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the difference between, because I agree with you, like here in the States, gluten is so inflammatory. Mm-hmm. But what is it about gluten that is different here versus in the versus in other countries?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but my understanding, is there's a couple of problems. Is that we spray it with glyphosate much more than other countries. Like I don't even think it's legal in some other countries or many other countries. So yeah, the pesticides, insecticides that are on it are a problem, and then I think also apparently the way the wheat is grown is different. So you may have heard that as well. So like my mom can eat long fermented sourdough bread, but she can't eat like a regular bread because of her gluten sensitivity. So I haven't run that experiment, but um, yeah, something about the way we make the grain, process the grain. So yeah, some people will say that they can eat gluten in Europe without issues. So it's fascinating, and yeah, and makes me kind of mad. So
Yes, I agree with you. It blows me away what we've allowed here in the United States, especially when it comes to diet, nutrition, planting with our crops.
yeah.
And we're genetically modifying a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that we're putting in our body.
Right.
Corn, um, barley. There's so many things that we are genetically modifying, including gluten products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we have
Exactly.
nutrition. We have gluten being one of the top ones there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then kind of if I'm kind of going to name off like the top 4 or 5 things that I really see moving the needle for people in healing across the board. Number 2 would be gut healing. We've already talked a little bit about that. Um one story like just really comes to mind for me. There was a woman who had rheumatoid arthritis. She was newly diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and she wasn't getting help and she was in pain. She finally went to a naturopath and they're like, you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And she addressed that. And within, I don't know what amount of time, pretty quickly her pain went away. It was kind of a combination. She made some diet changes and addressed, started like healing her gut. And she doesn't have rheumatoid arthritis anymore, which is supposed to be a chronic illness that you just manage for the rest of your life. So that is a recurring theme. And I found that to be true for myself that if you heal your gut, it's taking care of a lot. I mean, I feel like my anxiety was gut related. Um, and lots of the inflammation. So and yeah, so that's been really fascinating. And it could be just balancing your gut bacteria with probiotics. It could be healing the gut infections. It could be targeting parasites. So it just depends. But that's been huge. So did you also have a gut healing element as well, Leah?
Yes. For me personally, I actually don't have almost a third of my pancreas I
Oh, right.
lost.
Yeah, yeah, yes,
And
right.
so it played a really big role in how my gut acts and reacts. And still to this day, I have to do a lot of things I should say, I get to do a lot of things to support the optimal homeostasis of my GI tract because of that. But yeah, my gut definitely needed some significant healing when I started navigating this journey. Absolutely, that was a huge part for me.
Right.
And
Right.
what I
Yeah.
found as well is that many people might not know is your gut health has a direct correlation with lower back pain. And oftentimes, when your organs are not super healthy and well, when you're experiencing a lot of internal inflammation, that will lead to a lot of that lower back discomfort.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I had not heard that or realized that. So yeah, that makes sense. Though I mean, they're so closely, you know, located. They're close together. So it seems like it
Mm-hmm.
would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the another thing I would mention, detox is pretty key, and that's a part of my story that I didn't quite touch on yet. But I spent a year kind of going through a detox process or detox protocol because I had some testing and it turned up tons of chemicals, some metals, glyphosate, um, all the stuff that there's like flame retardants. There's just, our environment is so full of all of these toxins that I really, spent time, like tried to detox and support my liver and all that. Sweat it out in saunas and etc. The things that we know can really help with that. And at the same time, try to reduce the toxic intake. So change it, making sure I'm choosing organic and switching, like we talked about, personal care products and makeup, so that I'm not getting the parabens and the phthalates and all the other bad stuff. We distill our water now, like actually have a little thing I got off Amazon that just distills water, and it's just super pure form of it. So just trying to do as much as I can to reduce that toxic intake was huge. Yeah. And so that kind of got me further, and I see that with a lot of individuals. And if I could mention one story that's super powerful for me, I interviewed a gentleman with Alzheimer's who actually no longer had Alzheimer's. He lived in the Bay Area, and he started having cognitive difficulties. Went to the doctor. They did this Alzheimer's test, and he scored really poorly on it. So they gave him an Alzheimer's diagnosis. He got his driver's license taken away because of that. He found a functional medicine doctor and reached out, had some testing, and ultimately found that because he lives near an Air Force base, he had high levels of jet fuel in his system. And also kind of was insulin resistant and had some hormonal imbalances. So they started addressing all these different things, detoxing, working on his hormones and some metabolic stuff. And he basically got his brain back. He went back to the doctor. He took the test. The highest score you can get on this cognitive test is a 30, and he got a 29. This, second time he took it, and he got his driver's license back, and then did an interview with me. Like, people do not think that Alzheimer's is something that you reverse within a year, and he did. So, and that was largely a detox story. So it's powerful, for sure.
Yeah, detoxification is definitely very important. And for anybody that is listening to this right now, if you're seeking detoxification and feel like your body needs that, I would encourage you to seek out a practitioner like a naturopath, or someone, a functional medicine doc that can guide you through that, because detoxification can be a tricky journey, because you need to make sure that your body is excreting optimally, you're pooping properly, you're sweating properly, and that your detoxification pathways are open before you start pushing things out of your system. Otherwise, it can actually make you more sick and experience some really intense and uncomfortable symptoms. So if detoxification is something that you are seeking, I definitely encourage you to seek out a practitioner to guide you through that.
Yeah, really important point. Yeah, because I've experienced that myself, like going a little too hard and too fast on the detox process, and feeling bad because of it. So, and you have to sort of take it at your own pace and see how you're doing. And now the mind body stuff. It would probably be like the fourth pillar of healing that I have seen across all these interviews. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said, I did all this stuff and I got 80% better, but I really couldn't get all the way there until I healed my past trauma or got out of a stressful situation, whether that's work or relationships or whatever, or address negative emotions. So yeah, we can, talk more about that. But that is something that I didn't expect. That was really fascinating and surprising to me to hear so many people say that. So,
yeah, the mind body healing is very important in my opinion. And also one of the components, like you're talking about here, of homeostasis and optimal healing. And the fact of the matter is the body keeps a score on everything. It's not just in your mind, it's not just in your gut. Your mind, body is and your body are connected. You cannot separate the two. And the most simple example I can give of this is, imagine you are not someone who loves heights, and you then climb a really tall ladder and you're standing at the top of the ladder. It's going to give you that feeling in your belly, kind of like you have butterflies or you're nervous, and you actually experience that sensation in your stomach. Or when you're stepping into a big event and you're about to speak to someone, and maybe you get those butterflies in your stomach there as well. And the point is, you feel in your body what you're experiencing as emotions, and or what you're navigating in your mental state. And even with like a stressful situation, your body responds, right? And so, like, for example, if you're being chased by a dog, your body actually responds the same way as if you were in a stressful conversation with your partner. Your body responds the exact same way. It doesn't matter if one situation sounds more intense than the other. Your body, your organs, your cardiovascular system, your eyes, everything respond in the same way. And it's as if you're in danger. And when you stay in that place for so long, for example, you brought up trauma. When you have this unresolved trauma in your body for so long, your body stays in that state of, oh my God, I'm in danger. And that's oftentimes what leads to many things like fibromyalgia, autoimmune diseases, chronic symptoms that just seem to not go away. A lot of GI issues. I know a lot of people that have done every single thing under the face of the sun to heal their GI symptoms, and things didn't change until they started going to finding trauma-informed support, really, to help with healing that trauma and taking the body out of that stress response. And so I love how you're talking about all of these components, not just what's being put into the physical body, like the nutrition and the food and doing the gut healing, but also looking at these mind-body techniques that are also going to help with some of the other components, the emotions, the energy movement in your body, right? The health of your brain, your mental health. It's all so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so critical. And there's not one path to it. And you know that from all your experience personally and working with your clients. It's fascinating to see that. There's not one way to heal trauma. There's so many different practices that people have mentioned. In all my interviews, and some of it is, especially if you've been sick for a long time, like there's something called the cell danger response. Like your body just thinks it's under attack. Still, even if you're well, it's like you have to like retrain, neurologically, like retrain your brain to be like, no, I'm healthy. On a kind of a cellular level, which is fascinating to me. And I haven't personally gone down that path, but I'm really intrigued by it. So, maybe that's the next thing. Or just kind of like rewiring your, your neurology to healing, like resetting it to be like, okay, yeah, we are healing cells now. We are not, unhealthy cells. So, yeah, all that's been super fascinating. And Leah, I have to say, like, there's one thing that has to happen, like, no, that I would say is a mind body approach, and that's mindset. Really, every single person I've seen heal at some point had to believe that they were going to heal and go, I know I can heal. And it sounds very woo-woo when I say that to a lot of people, that you have to have a healing mindset to be able to heal. But if you have a healing mindset, you're approaching everything differently. If you're like, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to get past this and through this. It's just a matter of finding the right path out of it. But that is critical. So if you don't have that healing mindset, there are ways you can like work to get it, meditation and, other practices to kind of help you get there. But that is super, super, super powerful. Found that for myself and so many of the folks that I've spoken with.
Have you read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck?
You know what? I think I did a long time ago, but I need to go back and look at that. I feel like that's one
That was one of my favorites. It was definitely one of the first books that I read in my mindfulness and mindset journey, and it changed my life at the very beginning of everything, because she gave all these examples throughout the book, whether it be business and family dynamics and dating relationships and partnerships, whatever. She gave all of these different examples, and it gave me the opportunity to like step into observer mode and look at, oh wow, where are these areas that I actually am not supporting myself with the way that I'm thinking. And mindset and mindfulness and brain function, thought patterns, beliefs, etc., have become a huge part of what I do with my clients, because I know the benefits that it yields. And just like you're saying, like, I'm a believer that you cannot get to the place of experiencing a healed body unless you are willing to look at those beliefs, unless you're willing to look at the emotions, unless you're willing to look at the mindset that you have surrounding where you are now, where you have come from, and where you can go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is so powerful and in some ways so simple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it isn't, but it's something, that you can work to change and just carries so much weight in your healing.
Is mindset your number 5?
Yes, it was kind of, mind, body, stuff, and then mindset was number 5. Yeah, definitely.
So just to recap for you, we have some of the top 5 things that Casey sees in the majority of the interviews that she has that are supportive in their recovery. 1 being nutrition, 2 being gut health, 3 being detoxification, 4 being mind-body techniques, and number 5 being mindset. So if you're in your own healing journey right now and you are looking to optimize that journey for yourself, I invite you to take a look at these 5 things and see and ask yourself, is there an area where I might be able to give myself more support, or I might be able to go deeper into? And if you have any questions or any feedback on that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure Casey would be happy to hear from you as well.
Absolutely.
And so, Casey, with these approaches, why do you think, particularly the mind-body approaches, why do you think that these 5 things are so helpful for someone in their healing journey?
Yeah, I mean, in really kind of when I think about it, you're taking the burden off of your body and letting it do what it needs to do. That's what comes to mind for me immediately. You're like taking the burden off, like eating better food, that takes the inflammation out. Detoxing kind of takes the burden off. Gut healing's kind of, removing blockers there. The mind body stuff is maybe removing trauma or stresses or negative emotions. And then mindset is kind of, like gives you like the fuel to then, when you've taken the burden off your body to just, move through it and start to heal. I literally, like, when after especially did all these things and went through a detox process, like I felt lighter in my body. Maybe it's just like psychological, but like I feel lighter because I didn't feel like all these different things were weighing me down. Whether it's physical or emotional or mental.
Mm. I love that you said that. Something someone used to say to me often, and regardless of whether you're religious or not, and whether you want to use the word God, spirit, the universe, this person used to say to me, God's first task is to unburden you and to support you in unburdening yourself. And so, again, whether you like the word God, whether you don't like the word God, whatever word you want to put in place there, the first task of your journey is to unburden yourself. Yeah. And I love that you use that word burden, because it's true. By navigating through all of these things, you really are unburdening your mind and your body in many different ways, so that you can be an open vessel and a healthy vessel for whatever is to come in and come through. And in my experience, that's been unburdening my body has been a huge bridge into spirituality for me personally. And I know for many that I've worked with, that's been an experience for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's powerful and has to happen, and is so freeing for sure. Yeah.
So if you could offer one thing that you believe would support the world around you with a more mindful evolution, what would that be?
Wow. I guess I would say keep it simple. Like, I think someone, especially if you're really ill, you have a chronic illness and you're feeling terrible or in pain, it can feel like a mountain to try to get over that. But like, my experience is that it's one choice at a time. Then in a couple hours, the next time it's time to eat, I'm going to make a choice to support my body. And later on, I'm going to make a choice to support my body by going to bed early, or going to bed on time and trying to get a good night's sleep. Like, and it doesn't have to be hard. You can start making these small and simple choices, or to meditate. There are lots of free apps you can get on your phone. You don't have to pay for. I use Insight Timer and meditate with that, and I've never paid for it. Starting to feel a little guilty. I'm like, maybe I need to support them and upgrade. But or go for a walk if you're feeling stressed. There's just so many things you can do that are not simple and don't cost any money, honestly.
And in keeping things simple, does that also look like taking things like one step at a time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because it can be overwhelming. So, one woman I spoke with, I interviewed, she was like, okay, I'm going to spend a year on each thing. I'm going to spend a year just dialing in diet. Then I'm going to spend like the next year, like trying to move my body, because she was almost disabled was disabled from MS. And, year 2, she started moving her body. Year 3, she started working on trauma, that kind of thing. So like, yeah, you can just start with one thing and take it slow.
Yeah, I know when I'm working with clients, oftentimes there's a balance here. Sometimes people do one thing and they wait so long for this one thing to try to work. And oftentimes I say it's a combination of all the things that are going to support you on your healing journey. And it truly is, right? Just like we're talking about, like these 5 things, it's all the things, but keeping it simple in a sense of like, start slow. Like, you don't have to throw everything at the wall all at the same time, knowing that all the things are going to support you with better healing, but you also don't want to stress yourself out, just like You're saying, like, because if you're stressing yourself out, you're probably not going to support that process of healing.
Yeah. That is a super good point. We've mentioned a lot of things here, and it can feel overwhelming to be like, okay, taking all the notes, I'm going to do all these things. oh, I need to be fasting. I need to be doing keto. I need to like it's kind of like shiny object syndrome these days because we're so much is thrown at us in terms of health information and like, oh, you feel like you need to be doing all the things. But um yeah, go slow, try one thing. Also, you don't know what's working sometimes if you're trying 20 things all at once. Just try one thing and see how your body reacts and keep it simple.
Totally. Well, Casey, I loved having you here today. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. If you are interested in learning more about Casey, if you want to listen to her podcast, if you want to follow her on Instagram, I will put all of Casey's information in the show notes for you to find. She's at Rebuilding My Health at most platforms, so I'll put that in the show notes for you. And then, Casey, you also have a freebie for my listener today, correct?
I do. Yeah, it's called Break Free from Chronic Illness Insights from Hundreds Who Have Done It. And it's just, you can find it right on the homepage of rebuildingmyhealth.com. And I can give Leah the link.
Awesome. Check it out. Well, I will put that in the show notes for you. And like I said, if you're interested in going deeper and learning more about what the common threads are of those self-healers who have been able to navigate their journey through natural and unconventional routes and means, check out the freebie for you. So, Casey, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And I will chat with you guys soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Take care.